I swear, it's working right. We're all good. We're live. How are we all doing? Let's wait for some people to join the chat. Hello, if anyone is in the chat, let us know you're here.
Would it be best if I pop onto the Twitch or the YouTube for the chat?
It doesn't matter, whichever stream that you watch, I have both chat windows open on my stream. Just make sure you mute it, obviously.
Oh yeah, of course, otherwise you're just going to get feedback, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, on the top right, I've got the YouTube chat, and the bottom right, I've got the Twitch chat.
Nice. Okay, we've got two watchers there.
Excellent. Right, shall we get going then? So, if you would, like to introduce yourself.
My name's Tim Paul, and I'm a commentator on YouTube. No, my name's Martin. And I have a little project called CONFYDE, which is my musical project. I've been a full-time musician for 4 years as a cover singer, but due to the whole global situation, I've had to go back to doing original music instead, which has been excellent. I've been really enjoying it. And I released a single today.
Ah, you did indeed. Would you like to tell us everyone what the name of said single was?
Okay, so the single is called Cancel Freedom. Not clickbaity at all. With a hashtag at the front as well, just to rub it in.
Yeah. And what's the main themes of the single? Yeah.
Sorry, say again.
So, what are the main themes that you were going for with this song? Obviously, I think with the title, I think viewers might be able to guess what it was that you were talking about with this one. But you want to have a go over and specifically kind of what you were, the kind of aims that you had with regards to the marketing of the single.
Okay, so the last couple of singles I did, which were "Don't Lie Awake" and "Anchor," they were. I think they weren't politically neutral songs, shall we say, but they weren't overtly political.
Sure.
It was obviously as a response to my whole livelihood going down the drain as a result of the pandemic, and having people coming together to help each other. And "Anchor" was about being kicked out of my house as well, and making me reflect on the housing crisis. So, but they were not overtly saying the government's response to the pandemic has been terrible. We need to reform the housing system. It wasn't whereas the kind of mask is sort of off, but particularly it's basically essentially criticizing and acknowledging bad faith arguments we hear all the time in political discourse, particularly from the right, and how the sort of concept of freedom can be sort of manipulated to any old end.
Yeah, for sure. Was there any kind of particular instance that led you specifically a moment that inspired you to create the song in particular? Was there that moment where it just kind of clicked and something said this is frustrating me too much, I have to write a song about it? Was there one moment that you can harken back to that might have led you to this?
Oh, there's a couple. Actually, one of the key moments was seeing Johnny Rotten with a "Make America Great Again" t-shirt. That was pretty brutal, to be honest. I was you were a countercultural icon back in the 70s, and now you are literally an establishment shill.
I mean, things kind of started going downhill when he did the whole he did the butter adverts. Who was it for? Country Life, was it?
Country Life butter, yeah, that's it.
Exactly. I mean, to be fair, weren't the Sex Pistols literally just put together by a record label?
Oh yeah, they were basically a boy band, I suppose.
Just like the punk boy band.
I suppose the thing with Johnny Rotten is that it wasn't like the Clash or the Jam where they were quite overtly like socialists. Like the Sex Pistols were more of an like not even anarchist. They were more like nihilist. And I
Hmm.
suppose that kind of runs with being counterculture, I suppose. But what
Yeah.
that means is if you've already got a nihilist attitude, you can fill that void with any ideological garbage you want later on down the line. So I imagine that's what happened to Johnny. But I suppose it's also reflective of the fact that for rock stars like that, originally in their heyday, as they gain success and they gain wealth and money, suddenly they lose sight of where they originally came from. And there's a
Yeah.
couple of friends that I know who are of the older persuasion, who again who I love chatting about these sort of like classic bands from the 70s, you know, like Black Sabbath and the Jam and you know Bruce Springsteen. Obviously Bruce Springsteen's theme going strong, but who have all these like sort of these progressive viewpoints and you know sort of left leaning songwriting. But now in these days, same people who loved all that music back then are now either apathetic to the current political situation or actively supporting it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hence, the lyric from the first verse is like, "You loved seeing the Clash in the 70s, but look what happened when you got yourself a mortgage and a family."
Well, exactly. Well, I
This
mean,
drummer, yeah. Sorry,
yeah.
go on.
I was gonna say, it's entirely a change in material conditions, right? Isn't it? The same. I mean, the same people who were, were in our position however many years ago, especially in the like pre-Thatcher years, back when, back before neoliberalism, and back when, people's wages actually rose with productivity. What a funny time that was, and people who could afford to get a mortgage on a singular income and also support a family, and then they have it in their brain that this is just how the economic paradigm forever, right? It's that same world they grew up in must apply now, when it just doesn't. Like the way in which our economic system has changed so much in the past 40 years
Yeah.
means that our material cases are way different to what theirs was back then, and it's like an incorrect comparison. And now that they're part of the essentially like 20% of the boomer population have second homes that they rent outright. Like these people are now the
That
bourgeoisie,
much. Jesus.
and so
Mm.
they don't have the same connection with regards to an economic struggle that we would do now, right? So that's the change in their material
Yeah.
conditions.
That's it. That's it. And like for them, it was very much just both our generations got taught a similar dream in that if you just apply yourself and work hard, then you can achieve anything. You can have the equivalent of the American dream, where you have your own house and you start a family and you have a single job will be enough to pay away. But that's just simply not a reality for most people of our generation. And so I suppose one of the key aims of this song is to point that out and to say, look, like it's to sort of, because it's very a lot of people bring down this very reductive view of sort of personal responsibility and freedom, and the environment since then has changed. As you say, the material and economic conditions have changed, and they're like, we'll still go down and say, okay, well, if you're in a shit situation, then it's entirely down to you. You clearly just weren't innovative or go getting enough, or whatever, and I don't acknowledge any other sort of systemic or social factors that come into it. And then at the same time will then sort of chastise or look down on you, as I say, for having a vision of a better world. Whereas for them, like, the world is fine, there's nothing wrong with it. We basically reached the end of history, and the only thing that matters is individual choice and nothing else.
Yeah, for certain, for certain. I was also like the kind of epiphany I had about these people as well is that the reason why like the culture war stuff gets pushed so much in the media is that when your economic conditions like are just kind of fine, like when you don't have any kind of economic struggle to connect to, you don't really get involved in politics, right? It's something that you don't really, the grillers like just want to grill, right? They don't get involved in politics at all, really. So the reason why the culture war narrative has to be kind of pushed into the kind of the public consciousness is specifically to try and give these people an idea of something that they might actually lose, right? If you push some bullshit nonsense that Black Lives Matter are going to come and take away all of your freedom or whatever, haha, yes, exactly. Well, going back to the cancel freedom thing,
That's
like
it.
if they're just gonna if the whole Tim Pool thing was like they're going to come to your house with fireworks and guns, and you're just going to be like, leave me alone. If you can drive home this divisive narrative, then you're going to give these people something with which that they feel like they're going to lose. So you get them back involved in politics again, knowing that otherwise they would completely disengage because these people they've paid off their mortgages, they have their houses, they're looking to a defined benefit pension and a state pension. They're sitting pretty. They don't have to care anymore like they did 40 years ago.
Exactly. And I think it's very interesting how those institutions that stand to gain from those people's political involvement, as you say, will create these sort of leftist boogeymen out of literally any cause that seeks to change the way things currently are. So as you say, BLM are all terrorists, and the universities are all full of Marxists, and
but where are the Marxists? Where are the Marxists?
That's why I've been using the hashtag cultural Marxism when I'm posting about this song. Because it's just another conspiracy theory that's just dreamed up, somehow everything relating to progressive politics and trying to improve the world in a roundabout way can all be linked back to the Frankfurt School.
Exactly. It's just like a boogeyman that they can use to essentially give these people to scare these people into supporting neoliberal policies.
Well, that's it. Yeah, and this kind of sense that freedom is somehow under threat on two fronts. From implying that that classic old adage, the left are the real fascists or the real racists. On one hand, and say that they will literally, if you let transgender women into the women's bathroom, then that is the end of the white man. These you've got these over the top threats, obviously, that somehow it's the end of freedom, and they're gonna unless they will make you be gay. You will suck a dick whether you like it or not.
Exactly. Well, that's where the idea that the Conservatives were pushing back when gay marriage was a hot button issue, and they have to push this idea that somehow this devalues straight marriage with which to do it, right? Because otherwise people have no real opposition to it. You have to create some kind of false premise with which to argue against. It's just bad. It's a bad faith argument. Exactly. It just goes back to the themes, right? Doesn't it?
Exactly. And then the other prong of it is as I say, not only is there a threat against your freedoms as an individual, and somehow imagine that being a straight cis white male is somehow you're a victim group. On the other hand, there's also a very reductive view of freedom, and to say that what freedoms are important and what freedoms do we value. On the one hand, we don't seem to value a black person's freedom to walk down the street without being assaulted by the police for no reason. We don't seem to value that freedom, but we are up in arms about the fact that we might have to pay just a little bit more tax if you earn over £80,000. That is basically that's tyranny. Do I have to pay a couple % more tax over my $80,000 a year? Oh, good God! You kind of cancel freedom.
And that's where I think we're talking before on your live stream earlier today about the differences between positive and negative freedoms, and the way in which people weaponize the idea of positive freedoms to distract people from the fact they're losing their negative freedoms, right?
Could you explain that a bit better? Could you use an example?
So it goes back down to the where does your the freedom to swing your fists ends at the point of my face, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Whereas they'll say look, if we give people freedom from lack of healthcare, or freedom from persecution under the from reactionary attitudes, right? Then we have to somehow the weaponization comes from is we need to have freedom to be able to be shitty to minorities. I'm no, but that impinges on their freedom from your positive freedom to be a dickhead, right? And that's how it gets weaponized. And that comes round again to cancel culture, where they'll weaponize the idea that maybe people should act not like a dickheads to other people. Because
Yeah.
it's their positive freedom to go ahead and do that, right? To them to use their platform to be able to, spout transphobia in the case of J.K. Rowling, even if it's factually incorrect, even if they're peddling lies, they'll weaponize the positive freedom of free speech to be able
Yeah.
um, to be able to gloss over the fact that the words they have an impact. And the things that they do have societal implications, especially someone like J.K. Rowling has a huge platform to talk about issues that most people don't really otherwise engage in, right? Most people, when they think about J.K. Rowling, they just think, oh, it's just something, I don't ever get involved in transgender issues. But as soon as the TERF say, oh, we're attacked, it's women will be second-class citizens under the law, suddenly there's this fear that they're going to lose something by other people gaining rights, right?
That's it. Yeah. We have some concern.
Oh, and Kath, yeah, it's really interesting in the chat. Yeah, talk about how if we make things better for people now, then it's unfair on the people who didn't have that previously. Which is just like it's just like the trolley problems. Like, would it be fair to the people the trolley has run over if we stop the trolley now?
I love that. That's really good. That's a really good
I
analogy.
mean, it's literally replacing. Just like I'm like, I had it tough, so you did too. And I'm like, well, how about we just turn off all the fucking electricity, throw all the phones away, every single like technological advantage we've ever had. Like everyone has cancer should just die for every other cancer patient who previously died, even if we find a cure. It's madness. It's such a ridiculous line of reasoning.
Yeah, absolutely. It's oh, what was this thing? Oh no, I just had a really good statement and now it's disappeared out of my brain. Oh, what was it? Shit. We're talking about this the trolley problem.
Was the one? I mean, one of the other trolley problem memes. One of the other trolley problem memes I've been seeing a lot of is it's to do with the $15 minimum wage, and it's just like on one hand the Crunchwrap Supreme will be 10 cents more, but if we pull the lever, then it means that the lion's share of the population will be able to have enough money to be able to afford a basic subsistence existence. And I'm just like, no, if Crunchwrap gets 10 cents more, then I can't do that. Ironically, fuck, these prices have been increasing anyway, regardless of the minimum wage. So. Absolutely, casebook in the chat. Yeah, high taxes should absolutely equal good public services, but also like it's not just taxes is the important part. The other thing that we've seen from like the conservative austerity policy is the selling off of public goods, which is essentially the whole the Winston Churchill is just like trying to pull yourself up by a bucket that you're standing in, right? Well, that's literally what it is when you sell off public services for short-term financial gain, for long-term financial loss. You're essentially using a country's future budget to buy votes now. It's like a PFI. This is horrendous. Whereas if you have...
I've not considered that before.
Whereas if you have public services as a public good, like, for example, if you have like a public utilities where people just pay the government for that generates revenue. Like if these things weren't profitable, private companies would not want to buy them. They wouldn't want to buy these particular services when they get privatized by the government. So all you're doing is just shitting away revenue that the government could have by owning these particular industries.
And all it's going is into the billionaires' yacht funds, really, at the end of the day.
But horrid, I mean,
offshore.
Don't get me started on the way in which the Conservative Party essentially gutted our public coffers to be able to palm off to their mates in the private sector over the course of COVID, and all of the contracts for PPE that have just gone to donors, or the Chartwell scandal, the lunch, the school lunches.
That's shocking. I can't believe that. And like this feeds quite nicely into the whole culture war thing about how like there's somehow a threat to everybody's freedom if any sort of like progressive person gets in power, because as soon as you criticize the government, like this is undoubtedly we have the worst COVID death rate in the world at this point. And
Oh, Boris is trying his best, though. Boris is trying his best.
he's trying his best. It's something you say to a toddler that has done their first dry pasta collar, right? Not the.
I'm going to put your best up on the fridge with the rest of them, Boris.
Oh, well done, Boris. Just 80,000 dead or whatever it is at this point.
Exactly, and it's like, did you watch Vosh on Timcast IRL?
I watched bits of it. I didn't watch the whole thing.
Well, there was a point where where Tim Pool was saying, well, we don't have anything to compare the US COVID death rate to, because we can't go back in time and like have Hillary Clinton in charge. And it's just like, well, how many deaths would have been okay? If 1 million people died, would that have been okay? If they just done like completely nothing, it's like a controlled experiment. But the thing is, we do have things to compare it to. We have New Zealand, we have Australia, we have South Korea, where they're opening up and having normal lives again. We can not direct comparison based off population density and things like that, but it's this highest COVID death rate in the world and reopening 6 months down the line, right? Like these chalk and cheese.
Yeah. And the real difference is if you look at the policy difference, policies could not be more different.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I was trying to say is that with when you look at the UK and US, like especially in the UK, when you trot out obviously a valid criticism of the current government's handling of everything, which obviously is valid because we're the worst death rate in the world. The immediate response from the supporters, well, at least it's not Labour.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's the only defence that they've got left, because they can't defend the government on its own merits because it has none. So they have to revert back to the boogeyman that they've imagined for themselves. Oh, it's the spooky leftists coming to take your freedom with affordable housing.
Well, that's exactly it. All they do is just like saying, well, it's like the whataboutism. Kath in the chat saying, people who look down on other people because that person's doing okay, but still cares about people who aren't. Well, exactly, yeah. This hypocritical like standpoint that they have. It's completely like cognitively dissonant, where they say, well, you can't support poor people if you're poor because you're just jealous, but you can't support people if you're doing well off because that means that you're being disingenuous, right? But what it is it's a two-quock fallacy, where it's an appeal to hypocrisy with saying, well, you're not allowed, it's stolen valor for you to start caring about poor people. How dare you, as a rich person, tell me as a poor person how to live my life? And I was just like, well, why are you just like tossing away allies? Like, if they're fighting for your material interests against their own, like, just look at this from a materialist perspective.
Exactly. Again, I've just had another thing. I had a great thought, and it's now left my brain. I can't.
One of the things, well, like,
fantastic.
And you saw it all the way through the election cycle, where these people they have such like an inferiority complex. They'd much rather vote for someone who they see as being genuine, even if they're genuinely a bastard.
That's it. I mean, there's this weird thing where, rather than, it's almost like they hold parties that try to make the world better to a higher standard than to the party that they know are arseholes. Because they feel like if they vote for the nice... I'll call them. If they vote for the, inverted commas, nicer party, then they're worried that they will be disappointed. Whereas if they vote for the shitlords, then they know they're going to get a shitlord.
Yeah, exactly.
And they feel like they've been had, like they haven't been like, the amount that they've been deceived is less.
Yeah.
Hence the lyric in the song, you won't be caught out by deceptive mouths, but continue to smirk at those languishing in the dirt.
Exactly. Well, it comes back to why cancel culture doesn't actually affect the right at all. Like it does, it has no bearing on their life because they're not held to any kind of standard. They don't have the. Whereas on the left, we are discerning, and being discerning is good. It's a good quality to have, but it means that we are open to these. Kind of insular bully mobs that we saw with like people like ContraPoints and things like that, where because there's like a barrier, like there's a barrier that you have to jump over to be able to get involved. Where we say you have to be this tall to ride the leftist train. If you're
oh my god, the gatekeeping.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a certain level of where I think that's okay, where you can say, well, if you literally hold like very racist views, then we don't really want you as part of our movement. But instead of taking these people and saying, well, because you're not this tall, you have to fuck off, you're terrible, even if you try and improve, we're never going to accept you because of how you failed now. We have to give these people a dialogue with which to be able to move them around to our point of view. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I think you did a good job of calling me out about Roger Daltrey the other day, because a lifelong Who fan, of course. But obviously, a couple of years ago, Roger Daltrey of The Who, when asked about the implications for touring musicians as a result, if there was going to be like a hard Brexit and, freedom of movement was going to end, he was just like, oh, we had no problem touring Europe before we joined the EU. Why should it be a problem when we've left? And it's like, that was in the 60s, dude. That was the 60s. Like, Brexit isn't some kind of time machine, although some people wish it was. And then what's happened now is that now we've actually got the deal, and the transition period's over, and Brexit is finally sort of done and dusted in that sense for now. He's now sort of come around to the idea that, oh shit, okay, I've learned a bit more about the music industry and how it works now. That was a shit opinion to have. I will sign this petition to ask the government to make jobs easier for musicians to tour Europe. So that's a really good example where it would be very easy to just write off Roger Dodge, say, you're an asshole, and
lol, like you were a hypocrite, you were wrong that time, blah ha, let's laugh at you and in your wrongness. When it's like, well, at least you've come round, like at least you understand. And I was looking this up as well. The reason why they decided to not agree to this is just because they felt like it would damage the idea that we weren't part of Europe anymore. Like, literally, that's it. It's like, oh, it just might jeopardize the border if we have like visas for musicians. It was completely performative and it was miserable. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And Dude Sangzu in the chat as well. We do like leftists do eat their own for clout. Like there's a kind of subset of terminally online leftists who treat the movement as like their friendship group. They treat it like a club that they're a part of, rather than a political movement to enact change. And if they can performatively weaponize their their kind of woke position, like for woke points, they will throw any person under the bus, no matter how optically or pragmatically effective they are, because it gives you internet points. Like you get +1 internet for that.
+1 internet for being that I was very tempted to look at that side of things as well for cancel freedom, because it's a similar sort of effect that it has on the world, but I feel like that would have diluted the original message, and that probably deserves its own song.
Yeah. And also, Dude Tangzo in the chat talking about how, like, basically the only time the right ever cancels anyone is people like Milo Yiannopoulos in very extreme cases. The only other case I can really think about that's kind of similar to what happens on the other side is the Dixie Chicks. Do you remember what happened to the Dixie Chicks, Martin?
Oh yeah, they were this obviously a country rock group, weren't they? And they criticised George Bush and the Iraq War on stage and got completely like...
Oh, their career died. Literally their career ended overnight.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
they're not even called Dixie Chicks anymore. They're called the Chicks now.
Exactly. Well, the thing's problem is at the end of the day, like, that's just how marketing works. Unfortunately, if your fan base doesn't agree with your points of view, then they're not going to engage with you. But the problem is where when you get this internet clout thing going on, people aren't doing it because they have they want to genuinely use their position to enact change in the viewpoints of this person. All they're doing is for internet points at this point. Like, it's not like where they're having like a genuine ideological opposition to this person. Like, I mean, I keep going back to it for the ContraPoints example, where it was just some flippant comment on Twitter that just needed clarification, right? But you think that it gets completely, as remember from the cancelling video, it gets essentialized, it gets abstracted and then essentialized, right? Whereas a singular political position, in the case of like the Dixie Chicks, or with Milo Yiannopoulos saying maybe paedophilia is okay, and I was like, oh, that sounds bad, Milo.
Yes. Did he? I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't realize he tried
Oh
to
yeah,
defend fucking kids.
his book got cancelled and he got fired from Breitbart for saying that it was like a formative part of like gay kids' existence to get groomed by older men, and I was just like, doesn't sound great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you see, that's the thing, with being against pedophiles, like, it's the only thing left that the right can sort of keep like a moral standing, because it's like the lowest fucking bar. Like,
because like the far half of the because we've seen from. Because we've seen from the last 4 years that the right is completely fine with regular sexual assault, like with all of the Trump accusations and the grab 'em by the pussy, things like that. Like they've clearly they have no qualms with the idea of sexual assault, unless it's a black man like Bill Cosby, then they care. But they right clearly get the only line they have is pedophilia, which is why things like QAnon spiraled out of control so heavily.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. God, I can't believe that. In Manchester, did you have a similar thing that we had in Nottingham? It was sometime last year. We had these far right protests in Nottingham Centre, where you had all these mad QAnon nutters, and they claimed that it was like a march for children, and that it was like save our children, basically, and it was a march for children and to commemorate like dead war veterans or whatever it was. Again, like the two lowest bars, basically. Like, everyone can agree that saving children and looking after war veterans is a good thing. Like, everyone can agree on that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was like there, but obviously you go there and they're all waving fucking iron crosses. There's like, Jews will not replace us. All these like fascist iconography and slogans, and like, and there was obviously a counter protest. You had like BLM and Antifa there to counter them.
Yeah.
Did you have anything like that in Manchester in the last sort of year or two?
We had I think we had like just like anti-lockdown protests and EDL, but not like specifically QAnon kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty scary. I mean, to be honest, they got driven out. Like the thing is though, when these far right protests happen, they're almost always like collected from lots of different settlements, and then they say, let's all meet in Nottingham, rather than it all being like, denizens of Nottingham.
Yeah, for sure.
Cass says, dude, thanks you mentioned it. Can we talk about the danger of echo chambers on the left? The tendency of gatekeeping on the left can make the episode spiral even more. When we did touch on that, really, about the sort of gatekeeping type stuff.
So an interesting character to talk about is Shoe on Head, as an internet content creator, because she's done a lot of harm. She's done a lot of harm over the course of her career, in the kind of narrative that she's pushed, but she has since changed her tune on that, which is good. I'm happy about that. We have to have a conversation about how does she atone for the way in which she's harmed the discourse previously, but we also need to think about like, well, if she's on the correct path now, and that's what matters.
That's it. Yeah, it's if you continue to chastise somebody, that it does depend upon the amount of harm that they have done, but if they come to you and say, look, I was wrong, what I did was wrong, I accept that I did harm, I'm sorry, I want to be better. If you throw that person away and say, no, you are beyond redemption, then they are just going to go back to their old ways. And they will continue like enabling like the alt-right and
Exactly. You're absolutely right. And it kind of it's similar to the kind of cancel culture discourse as well, in that it's there's no second chances. There's then like for a political movement that believes so heavily in the idea of rehabilitation over punishment. Exactly, like, or retribution, specifically, like rehabilitation is as a method of, like, specifically with regards to the law, and with regards to crime. How we don't do this when it comes to our social interactions, I find very frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. But this leads on quite nicely to kind of subject of, again, back to the song, because we're obviously discussing like really bad instances of things like, cancel culture. Where and like you say, like cancel culture is a legit issue, and so can be, as you say, sort of virtue signaling, where you have people purely being woke just for internet points, right? Rather than because they actually want to affect any meaningful change. But those two terms have so been, as you say, weaponized by the right to the point where they will label literally any movement for social change as some kind of vacuous virtue signal or an instance of cancel culture.
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. And because things like there's like, I think it's worth saying. I think cancel culture can only happen within a community, right? It can't happen between communities, because that's just like, if it's between communities, that's just an ideological difference that they have, and they just don't want to interact with them on an ideological level. Whereas it's inter a community, you then cut people off from their base, from their supporters, from their friend, their support group, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the worst
I'm
kind of cancel culture discourse is with comedians and comedy. It
oh
drives
my
me up the
god.
fucking wall. So where basically people will tell jokes about like such lowest common denominator bullshit that if you gave the script to Roy Chubby Brown, he'd just look at you and go, no, not really. Like, if you like, and they just, and no one laughs at them, and they think they deserve the freedom to be laughed at. They deserve the freedom for people to laugh at their jokes. I'm like, I'm sorry, like, it's just not how that works. And they'll go, well, you just don't have a sense of humour. So no, I do have a sense of humour, because I like my jokes to be well structured and funny, not just like super lowest common denominator garbage that like anyone could tell when it comes to people who continuously repeat attack helicopter jokes or whatever.
Oh god. Why is I mean, obviously comedy is subjective. People find different things funny, but for the record, conservatives are not funny.
No, they just they
Uh,
just they just aren't. They only have this. They say they tell the same two jokes over and over again. And when people just like get exasperated, it's just not funny. They go, "Oh, you just want to cancel me, don't you? Oh, it's so much for the tolerant left." And it happened with Frankie
oh my
Boyle as
god.
well, where Frankie Boyle called Ricky Gervais's anti-trans humor out, not even for being transphobic, but just for being lazy. Because it is. It's just really. He had the stand-up skit where he said, "Well, I identify as a chimp, so you're gonna have to call me Bozo now. And my pronouns are chimp self." And I'm just like, well, it's not funny. Like, this is just the same joke that's been told 1,000 times before by people who've called their comedy special Triggered on Netflix, right? Like,
Yawn. And that's it. Again, it ties back into the whole trying to weaponize cancel culture. Like they are so trigger happy to yell cancel culture, just for people saying that what you've said is incorrect or what you've said is not remotely funny. It's like you're trying to silence me. Criticism is not censorship.
exactly. It's like, oh, and I said that I think that all the Jews deserved what happened to them in the 40s, and then suddenly I had my comedy special taken down from Netflix. Oh, cancel! Oh God, I fucking cancel culture strikes again as the FBI pull me away from my basement turned pipe bomb factory. Oh God, so much for the tolerant left.
So, yeah.
It's infuriating. It's absolutely infuriating. I
You
think
know that some either like an alt-righter or like a super woke scored leftist is going to like clip that out of context for you, and then you're going to be cancelled.
oh, again, but yeah, it's the Vosh paradigm. Yeah, that's gonna happen to me. Like, it's ridiculous. I mean, things with the Ricky Gervais Frankie Boyle thing. Everyone's tweeting, "Oh, Frankie Boyle's gone woke." Oh God, no, he's not being woke. He just is funny. Like, his jokes are very well structured, and he's a very very comedic person. Unlike Ricky Gervais, who's basically built his entire career off the back of Stephen Merchant.
Yeah, like and Ricky Gervais is just, he's done some good work. I enjoyed Extras.
Extras was really good. Yeah.
but his stand-up is just painful. It's just embarrassing. I think embarrassing, and
You
there's
can't even scroll racist abuse in excrement on someone's car without the politically correct brigade.
like jumping down your throat, and that
Exactly.
and here's another thing, right? And it's all. Oh my god, all these different ways of describing it. Like Paul, who's watching on the stream, has just linked me to a tweet here from Tim Whitehead. Cancel culture in 2020 is exactly what political correctness was in 1990. It's a thing conservatives made up so they can pretend they are speaking truth to power and fighting for free speech when they are actually just being awful people.
Well, that's exactly it. And again, it's this positive negative freedom thing, but they think they should have the positive freedom to just do these kind of things without recompense. Casebook, like talk about what does cancel culture mean. So like what it actually means is when you have an it's an intra social space kind of phenomenon where you essentially you take a thing someone says that may or may not be problematic. Some cases it probably is, right? Where someone accidentally misgenders someone and then doesn't apologize straight away or whatever. Like this is a social faux pas, right? And it is a transphobic thing that they've done. Or it's something that is at least antagonistic, right? And then you take that individual instance and you abstract it to go, such and such was being transphobic, and then from that it gets essentialized into such and such is a transphobe, and no matter how many times they apologize or how many times they do not repeat that behavior and then act in a more in a better way moving forward, that singular instance will always have been abstracted and then essentialized to the point where this person then gets completely ostracized from the community they're a part of.
That's it.
It's not someone getting consequences for being a dickhead on the internet. It's not just, I went online and I said that all trans women are murderous rapists, and then now it's cancel culture going wild, where I now lost my book deal or whatever, and people say I'm awful. That's not what cancel culture is.
I think, John, I think it might pass by. Like, cancel culture is like a real thing that happens. That is a problem, but as we've mentioned, it gets weaponized by the right so often to sort of write off any instance of calling people out for bad behavior as just cancel culture. Mm-hmm. Oh, what? You scrawled racist excrement on a car? And you arrested me. This is just political correctness gone mad. It's cancel. You're canceling me for my freedom of speech. Why won't you just let me oppress minorities?
And at the end of the day, the important part is creating a dialogue for positive change, right? If this person does something wrong, because we clearly have an idea of what's wrong and what isn't, what's wrong and what's right, what is actually a moral thing to do. I mean, we all have individual moral philosophies that differ, but there's at least some kind of societal consensus, and that you don't go to someone's house for a meal and then tell them that food is shit, right? Because it's not polite. In the same way, you don't go up to a trans person and call them by the wrong pronouns deliberately. There's a difference between accidentally and deliberately as well, right? But it's people who show a willingness with which to go to to change that position. That's what's important. Whereas if someone says this kind of thing and then they double down and then they refuse to, make any kind of amends for this, that's when you start having a problem. That's where we start getting into the Monopolis, the J.K. Rowling kind of situation, Lawrence Fox, etc.
Yeah. J.K. Rowling's an interesting. Well, I say interesting. J.K. Rowling was this depressing one because obviously she has no she has no qualification to speak about trans issues at all. Yeah,
she's not a gender theorist. She's not a psychologist. She's not a sociologist. She's not a biologist, and she's not an endocrinologist. She doesn't know any about these things, but she does reckon something. Just like Robert Webb, just like Robert Webb reckons he knows about trans issues.
God, that hurt. To find out Robert Webb was a bloody
TERF. To be fair, he's married to a TERF, so it's almost it probably got passed on by kind of osmosis. But I don't think that sets a dangerous precedent where we only hold women accountable for transphobic views, and that is a problem, right? Where we talk about TERFism as it's specifically, TERFism itself is because the rad fem idea is mostly a problem with like a feminist kind of discourse, but it doesn't mean that men who engage in this as well are only doing it because they've been influenced by women, right? They are doing it of their own accord,
Yeah.
and you told them individually accountable.
I've just realised I'm going to tag this dude Tang Zhu and send them to the song because I don't recognise the name.
Yes, that's a good point. Pop the link to the song in chat. Probably should have played that at the start of the stream. That would have been a good idea.
Yeah, we still can. There's nothing to stop us playing it now.
I might play it on the way out actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was another thing I was going to talk about. Is like the music industry in a COVID era. Like, how's that been working out for you?
Shit. In a word, it's been really shit. I mean, obviously, prior to I restarted CONFYDE. Basically, CONFYDE is the name that I used for my original music to separate it from Martin Jackson, which is my name, as a like wedding singer and like a professional that is happy to work with almost any almost any context. You know, if you pay me enough, I will play. Which means mostly weddings and functions and pubs and bars, stuff like that. Holiday parks. I also, my other big earner was I also sing for a System of a Down tribute band, which is a lot more fun. But it's similar in that it's also covers and playing other people's songs. Obviously, as a result of COVID-19, all my gig bookings for last year were written off, all of them. So I had to find new ways to try and get by. And so I was like, I've got all this time now. So I just thought, let's try and make original music work. So I started up CONFYDE as a project again, and I've done 4 singles since. So honestly, today was the 4th one, Cancel Freedom. And yeah, it's been really rewarding. I mean, I've not seen a full return on investment yet. I've not turned a profit yet. But
it's a loss leader.
I've had to take alternative work. Obviously, I went back to my old job to work part-time, but I've also been earning a bit of money through live streaming, taking donations. Obviously, with CONFYDE, I've had some monetization opportunities. So every time I release a single, it goes out on all the streaming services like Spotify and YouTube and everything for free. Everyone can watch it and engage with it. But then every single has B-sides attached to it, which are only available on Bandcamp, and then you have to pay for those. So it's basically people that want more music straight away and they're not satisfied with just the one song. It's like, yeah, it's here. It's on Bandcamp. You can pay for it. Yeah. Eventually, all these songs will probably end up on Spotify too, but not till much later. And probably remixed as well, because the B-side, I mixed them all myself. But yeah, so it's been really tough to... The biggest challenge I've had is that I've not been... Because obviously I've got no income from music, really. As I say, I have had income, but I've not had any profit from CONFYDE yet. So I've not been able... Because I've had to obviously do part-time work as well, I've not been able to fully focus on making CONFYDE work for me as a full-time income. So that's been my problem, is juggling both those things. Because I think if I'd had that extra 20 hours a week back, I've been taking a music business course, and I could have dug in far deeper into that and you know, got things going a lot quicker. But yeah, I think when the next grant comes in, I am just gonna either reduce my hours drastically with the day job or sack it off altogether, because I'll have enough savings to tide me over, whereby I can get the acoustic gigs back in, but then also focus back, you know, really focus on CONFYDE, because I will have more of my time back, and not only will I have more time, I will be able to allocate that time more effectively, because I won't have it. Okay, on Monday and Tuesday and Monday to Friday, I must allocate the 4 hours a day to hot tubs.
Yeah. It must be very frustrating for you in these positions as well, like especially when there's the Rishi Sunak thing where he's talking about, well, maybe all these people in the arts are just going to have to retrain. Must have been very frustrating.
Music is how do I put this? We'll just talk about culture in general, like the culture is what, you know, brings people identity and happiness and brings them together. So whether that's shared, you know, films, art, poetry, music, these are the things that, you know, will make us human, really, I think. And Stephen Wilson is quoted as saying, "As music is the greatest art form." Now that's debatable, but I agree with him.
It's video games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, video games are an art form.
I mean, by video games, I mean specifically Pathologic 2. But that's a story for another time.
No Justice has done a playthrough of Pathologic 2 on her channel.
On 200% difficulty, I might add.
But what it means is that musicians and self-employed, the vast majority of music workers are self-employed, like myself. And we have had, eventually, a fairly generous bailout for those people who are eligible. A lot of people have slipped through the cracks.
Yeah.
But not only have self-employed people been hung out to dry in a lot of cases. I mean, I've obviously been doing full-time music for 5 years now, and I've had enough tax receipts to say, give me money, please. I've been paying into the system. The way that lockdowns have been focused in this country, and the way that the support for businesses has been targeted, or rather not targeted, meant that places where musicians would normally go to play and would normally cut their teeth and make their money and build their audiences are shutting down. And we can't live performance anyway, because all the pubs are shut, all the venues are shut. A lot of the blame for infections is being heaped on the hospitality and entertainment industries, when it's actually mostly being spread in office spaces and schools. So we feel unfairly targeted by that, and I think it comes down to, well, educating our children is important, and going to work for your nasty estate agent boss is crucial, but creating music and enriching culture is not. We've decided that some occupations are worth the risk of spreading the virus and some aren't. That's what it comes down to.
And I think in general, there's I think it's a very ideological thing. Remember back on the very first video I released on this channel was Gavin Williamson refusing to give bailout funds to universities who didn't offer proper courses, right? And essentially it's an ideological war against people who don't subscribe to the corporate culture. And in general, the idea that why should the government support self-employed musicians? Because those people aren't of benefit to their donors, right? They want to be able to change it so that everyone gets put into this kind of wage labour machine that drives the profits of their shareholders and the profits of their donors and their donors' shareholders, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is a big part of it. And with that whole, I mean, Sunak did a massive Freudian slip when it was on about, some people will just have to retrain. I was like, with what jobs? Not only, I mean, it's already a stupid thing. Like, that people are losing their jobs more than ever before. And, Thatcherism, which is obviously where this is all grown from, their policy was unemployment. Not only is that a stupid thing to suggest, but also, when you have spent, I mean, to use me as an example, I've spent my whole life training as a musician and as a singer. Like, that's been my entire trajectory of my life. So the government might expect me to say, well, I'm sorry, you're going to have to completely start again, despite the fact that you've, as we've said, you've been a go-getting upstart and begun your own business and been self-employed. Sorry, no, you're going to have to retrain. Go work as an Amazon warehouse for one of our cronies. This whole idea, I think Deborah Meaden, believe it or not, I'm quoting Deborah Meaden here.
Jesus.
She said, millionaire Deborah Meaden, she said that the Conservatives are not the party of business. The Conservative Party are the party of hedge fund managers, financiers, and property owners.
Yep, you're absolutely right, yeah.
Okay, they are not. They would rather you go work for poverty wages in an Amazon warehouse or in a Starbucks than if you succeed on something like music that they can't profit from personally because they don't receive any donations from it.
Well, that's the thing, is that they are ideologues in the sense that they will just follow them. They'll follow their own personal gain. They're not in politics to make the world better. They're in politics as a career, right? And that's where that's where
Yeah.
ideology lies. Whereas on the leftist kind of side of things, and obviously like the social democratic side of things as well as like the leftist side, we are ideologues in the sense that we want to make the world better. Like we have a vision of a better world than we have currently that we want to move towards, rather than for not just ourselves but for everybody else, rather than and in general the way in society is structured. Insofar as that's not what the ideologues on the neoliberal side have, where they just want to follow the money. Whereas what the problems I have at the moment is that on the kind of the liberal side of things, we don't have ideologues. We just have political windsocks, which is people like Biden and Starmer who will just blow whichever way the wind goes. Right, they'll just blow the same ways that
Political windsock. I like that.
yeah, will just adopt whatever positions they think will work best for voters. Right, which doesn't work. It doesn't make people want to vote for you.
Oh no, absolutely not. It's pretty vacuous, isn't it?
Yeah, and they'll just keep flip flopping issues.
That's it. Like either you yeah. So I can't remember what I was going to say at that point. But yeah, it's.
But I absolutely agree that yeah, like I think that there's just like a genuine, like not I don't it's not it's as well as it being a kind of a financial thing from the kind of the conservatives, where they don't see their own financial benefit in you being a musician and you being self-employed, right, and you doing your own thing rather than going to work and just like slave away in an Amazon warehouse. I also believe like it's also part of like this culture war against the metropolitan liberal elite, which is not really what you are as a musician. You're just a person, trying to make ends meet, trying to fulfill your own personal goals, right? Although I guess for lesser you kind of own your own means of production if you're entirely self-employed under your own sales.
That's the interest. I think I mentioned this to you before. I think that self-employment is a really interesting intersection between left and right sort of discourses. Because on the one hand, it should be laudable for somebody like a libertarian to say that, or a new right conservative to say that you've taken full responsibility for your income. Nobody's handing you a job on a plate. Nobody's given you a regular wage. It's your job to go out there and find the work, to build a business, to do basically everything yourself. That is the most fiscally responsible that you can be, to be a sole trader.
Like the neoliberal individualism type thing.
That's it. Even if obviously that pays into like a bad faith thing later, where actually they don't value sole traderism, they just want you to work for a corporation. But on the flip side, from the left end of things, at the same time as that, you are also 100% owning all your labor. Nobody else is extracting a surplus value off your labor. You own all of it.
Yeah, and you decide you decide the value of your contracts and things like that to some extent, because of course there's still market force involved, where like if you charge too much for your services, then people will refuse to then take out those contracts. But at least it's sort of mostly under your control, and there's no expectation of labor like surplus value extraction, as you mentioned before.
That's it. And as we learned, like markets are not synonymous with neoliberal capitalism.
No, quite. I find it very frustrating when people say that, and I've done that I've said that in previous videos. But like there's like an ideological thing they have just against, and I think they can easily weaponize it as well. Is that if you don't work, they've had this kind of messaging and this kind of paradigm where if you don't work a wage labor job, then you don't deserve to be able to talk about working conditions as well. It's like you've not worked, it's not proper work unless it's wage labor, and so you're not past you can't it's impossible for you to be able to empathize with people who do have wage labor because you're self-employed, right? And then they use that as a driving wedge between working class people.
Yeah, big time. When actually, you probably work, as a self-employed. The thing is, like, when you're self-employed, you work 3 times. You work to get the work, you work when you do the work, and then you work to get paid for the work. Like, it's really tough. You have to really love what you do to be self-employed. because you can't. I mean, eventually, now this is the interesting thing. Eventually, if your business grows to the point where the number of inquiries you have is too much for you to handle in the time that you have, you then either have to choose not to grow or hire somebody or contract out the work to somebody else, which is interesting because now you're then going to have a conversation about. This is where I find the most interesting conversation to be had between sort of between like capitalists and maybe market socialists, is that when you've got a worker cooperative where the workers own the means of production, even though there is still a hierarchy in place, it's not that you've got a massive amount of surplus value being siphoned off to, you know, a couple of board members or CEOs or shareholders. Most of the profits are going towards the vast majority of, you know, the majority of the
workforce.
My question is when you do start a business and you have to start employing people or contracting people to do the extra work and to enable that business to grow or that cooperative to grow, I'm interested to know the process of how you get from being just a sole trader to being a worker cooperative. I find that really interesting.
Well, the interesting thing is, at the very least, when it's just you know, getting into a conversation with somebody else for their services, when it's just you as a sole trader employing an editor or employing a producer or employing a social media manager or something like that, because it's just you and another person, the bargaining agreement that happens there is a natural one, right? It's a natural bargaining agreement between two people where both of you have power, because, you know, it's the services that this person provides is unique to what you need, but you have the capital with which to negotiate that employment, and there is a negotiation that happens. Whereas with wage labour, there's just an entire group of people who have all of the capital in the world, and then a group of people who have literally no power at all, because all of these jobs are basically the same and have very little benefits, and they're all being paid literally the minimum wage, because, you know, if there wasn't a minimum wage, they'd be paying you less than that, because that's how they extract as much labour value. That's where this difference happens, is why the importance of unions, and why, you know, you see $22 minimum wages in Denmark, because the collective bargaining agreements are so strong between the industries and between the workforces and the boards in these particular industries.
So that's really interesting. I'm glad you said that, because it really ties into one of the sort of myths of sort of laissez-faire capitalism, in that every employment, the whole point, and obviously the theory is that every trade, every transaction, every contract is voluntary. Like, the whole point is that people enter into a voluntary agreement which is mutually beneficial and everybody wins and the economy goes, right? But they forget the whether something is voluntary or not is not so black and white. So, as you say, between two different self-employed people contracting each other for services, like, they're sort of on a level playing field. But when it's a massive corporation or a massive business, you know, and, you know, as you say, they've got all the capital. They're saying, well, this is the job, that's what the wage is. What's your alternative? You're going to starve. No, you have unskilled labor, we've decided. And this works quite nicely with the housing market as well, because how voluntary is your choice to enter into a voluntary contract to rent?
Yeah, because it's like, well, if you, like, when people just go like, well, if you don't want to rent, why don't you just buy a house? I'm like, just buy a house. Why didn't I think of that?
I think of that.
Exactly. It's just like, and there's this barrier to entry of the amount of money that you have to have. Like, in both these situations, where you have to have enough money to be able to have capital to be the member that. To be, put the employer rather than the employee, because there's massive capital disparity. In the same way, there's a massive capital disparity between people who can own and people who have to rent. It's just like, this is the sucking dick for coconuts argument all over again.
Yeah, I love the sucking dick for coconuts.
It happened again. Okay, so like it's an explanation of why capitalism is coercive, or like wage labor under capitalism specifically is coercive. Like, so say for example, it's yourself and one person on a plane. The plane crashes on a desert island. You get knocked out. The other person wakes up first. They gather all of the coconuts from all the coconut trees on this desert island. It's the only food source around. They shelter them under the wreckage of the plane. They have a gun, and they say, And when you wake up, they say, "I have all of the food here. I have every single part of the food that's on this island. I will very, very gladly share this with you if you suck my dick." Like, is this coercive? It sounds coercive, and that's just how wage labour under capitalism works. It's like, we get to choose where you work. I'm like, yeah, you've got to choose one of them.
You have the freedom to choose, and it's back to this super reductive or very specific version of what freedom actually means.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's no freedom from wage slavery, but you do have the freedom to choose your slaver.
Oh my god. I wish I'd put that in the lyrics now. Very quickly, just want to say to Dude Tang Tzu, he said, "That's awesome, man. Keep playing, keep creating. Thank you. I'm glad you like the song. Please subscribe." Me and my band decided to break up right before COVID. I've been just making EDM and experimental music for fun. Oh, wait, I'm sorry to hear about your band breaking up. What sort of thing were you playing?
And also, everyone who's watching here, if you're enjoying the content, I would highly recommend you subscribe to me on YouTube, and click the bell if you really want to, and also subscribe to CONFYDE Music on YouTube that I'm gonna go and post in the chat now.
That is 5 full clicks. You want to click subscribe and the bell. Then you want to click on my link. That's the 3rd click, and then the 4th click you click subscribe for CONFYDE Music, and then you click on the bell.
There we go. Let me pop it in the chat.
Cara says, "I appreciate what you do as a musician, Martin. Now you better not cancel playing at the wedding." So I'm playing at Paul and Cara's wedding in September. Touch wood. Now, obviously, I want to play there. Obviously, I'm very excited to play. I really hope the restrictions mean that I'm still going to be able to.
Fingers crossed, eh? Well, technically, it's work. Like, you're allowed
It's work, but it's also performance. Like, performances are not allowed at the moment.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
If
you could be a wedding guest, though. You could be. How many guests are allowed at weddings?
It's like 15 or something.
Yeah, if you're one of the wedding guests and you just happen to bring your guitar.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, at the moment, weddings are just not allowed full stop for the full lockdown. I know in like tier 3 or tier 2, they were allowed.
Yeah.
But we'll see how things develop. What was I going to say? Or you may play Wonderball. Who is that? Come on.
It's Kath.
Oh no, I made the mistake of biting. But what did you reckon to the song, by the way?
Oh, it's great. Loved it. I mean, hardcore is definitely hardcore and punk is like immediately my wheelhouse. So it was obviously up my street completely. You know me.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it. I've never done like hardcore punk music before, so this was my first foray into it.
Excellent. I very much enjoyed it.
Even though it's obviously not like a pure hardcore punk song, there's like elements of just straight rock and like new metal almost. But
I mean, and I love new metal as well. You know, Limp Bizkit style. Take it to the Matthews Bridge.
Oh dear.
One thing I wanted to talk about as well with regards to the music industry is Spotify. I wanted to do a bit about Spotify because their business platform is garbage for musicians specifically.
Really is.
And I feel like you have an intimate knowledge of this.
Okay. So artists. Okay, so it's kind of been accepted, really, by like 99% of songwriters and producers and artists, right? That Spotify is not a means of income. It's just not. It is merely a platform for people to become aware of you. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you will make 0.00003 pence per stream.
It's exposure, though. You can pay your bills in exposure.
That's paid. That my streaming revenue has paid for this 4-pack of beer, right? That's how much I've earned. Don't Lie Awake, my first single, that's been on like a playlist, and it's been streamed 1,000 times, right? Which is pretty cool. But
it's 30 pence. Woo!
earned a fiver
Five,
from all
eh?
my streams. But that's since 2016. Right? So when I did the Unashamed EP, right? So but this is the thing, like this wouldn't be so bad if Spotify were not creaming off. Again, it comes back to this surplus value thing, creaming off a shit ton of income for themselves. Mr. Daniel Ek, the fucking billionaire, right? Now don't get me wrong, because Spotify does not own any of the music, they don't own any of it, they don't own any of the rights to it, they just have the rights to put it on their platform, right?
That's not true. They do own some of the music. They have specific music that they've commissioned to own, that they put on their playlists, and then they will game the shuffle algorithm to push their song to the top of the playlist, so they gain listens on their platform without having to pay out artist royalties.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I was going to get to that. That's how they've been trying to get around it, because like even that Spotify has to keep growing, otherwise it is going to go under, because they don't own any of, apart from obviously the songs and pieces that they have deliberately commissioned to like try and dominate their most popular playlists, right? Because they don't own the music, and they don't own the masters. All they own is the publishing. It means that they have to keep growing, otherwise they will just go.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But this is the thing. So, Mr. Daniel Ek, Mr. Billionaire, I'm having to massage my temples so that I don't get stressed talking about this. He's made some very stupid fucking statements. I might say stupid, silly. So, first of all, in one sense, he's right about this. He said that it is not enough for artists to just release music once every 2 to 3 years and expect that to be enough. Now, it's true that the old format was, and you know, I think the album format is still relevant. I think it is worthwhile to release albums. People do still consume music that way, but it's not as important as it used to be. It used to be that you put out an album and you tour it, right? And that was it. And then, you know, there's a whole cycle.
Yeah.
Now, which is why I've been doing everything with singles since July, it's better to feed your fan base little but often. So keep people engaged and keep the conversation going, rather than going blowing your load too.
Expecting your long progressive concept album to last until the next one, when you know we're living in a world of constant like media barrage, and now and again and again and again, you have to keep people hooked. You have to continue like pumping out content. Which is why streaming is such a popular thing nowadays, because it is continuous content.
Yeah.
Also, hello Mubs in the chat.
Say again.
And also hello Mubs in the chat. Sorry, has been a while.
Okay. Oh no way. What was I going to say? It does depend upon the type of music you're putting out and what the consumption habits are of your fans. If you're putting out pop music, then singles is the way to go. You know, but to be fair, like you said, progressive rock fans will want an album experience. They might actually be quite interesting to see how a purely singles approach would go for things like prog or ambient music, where it's long form to be appreciated. But albums is a much better way to do that, because they are happy to wait, because they want to have that repeat listen experience. Whereas with like maybe, I don't know, other more short forms of music, like because there's not so much replayability like in that short format, you want the next thing soon. Anyway, I'm digressing quite a bit here, but like what it means is that it is important to keep that constant dialogue going with the fan base by releasing little and often. And he was right about that. But the problem with Daniel Ek is musicians are already screwed over by Spotify. We don't make any money from Spotify unless we are like
Taylor Swift,
unless we are Ed Sheeran, like or Bruno Mars. Like we are not going to rake it in. But there is Daniel Ek sitting on his billions of dollars, and there he is saying that, by the way, musicians need to work harder.
Oh, let's go. This crazy thing. It's just like, and he didn't program. The Spotify apps. He didn't generate the algorithms, and he didn't write any of the music. Why is he the one with the billions, right?
I mean, to be fair, again, this comes back to what happens. You start a business idea. You've got this great idea. How does it grow?
Yeah, exactly. That was
he-
Napster.
yeah, I mean, yeah, well, that's it. He took an idea that already existed, and he sort of optimized it, But at the end of the day, he's now at a point where, okay, yeah, he's the main decision maker, but is the platform that we've got, is that a result of his work? No.
No.
Spotify would not exist without the fucking billions of hours that musicians and producers put into making music.
Exactly. Well, the
And
same
he
way
to turn
that
around and say,
yeah.
"Well,
Same with
he to turn
Amazon
around and say,
wouldn't
"By the
function
way,
if none of
guys,
the
it's
workers
not
went to
enough.
work.
What you're giving me is not enough. It's just unbelievable."
Yeah, it's so arrogant of them to position like and it's like everyone else should be working hard apart from me. I should be able to live off passive income for the rest of my life. Like it's so arrogant. It's very very arrogant.
It's entitled. Is what it is. It's
Yes,
entitled.
it is entitled. Yeah, you're absolutely
Give
right.
me more stuff. You give me your stuff. Like to be fair, I think it should be that Spotify pays you to have your music on there. You are giving them your work for free. But I digress. The second thing about Spotify, or there's three things now. So the second thing, you're right. You're absolutely right when you mentioned that when it comes to people's consumption habits, playlists are more important than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And even though obviously people go to Spotify for the artists they want to hear, and they do trust Spotify to recommend new music for them, that is the way you get discovered through Spotify, right? When you spike the algorithm.
Yeah.
But in these playlists, you're right. If I will commission music that they do own, because they don't own any of the rest of the music, they are now keeping those royalties for themselves.
Yeah.
And they will put those songs at the starts of those playlists now. So it's a really sneaky way of going about it.
Yeah, it's a real bastard.
The third and another thing. So you sound like you had something to say about that.
No. Continue.
What was I going to say? Yes, and the third thing is, so not long ago, I did a post about this on Facebook a while back. Daniel Ek said that he obviously got a personal fortune of billions of dollars. And he said he is going to invest his money all around the world. He's going to invest in industries. He's going to invest in, he's going to work with governments. He's going to put money into like space tech and into energy, all these like really important industries. Now, that all sounds like good stuff, right? If you want to invigorate the energy industry, like renewable energies, that's good stuff to invest in, right? But, the sort of reductive argument is to say that, if you've got that money, it is yours to do with as you wish. But the music industry, as we've been talking about, is on its fucking knees. All the way around the world. Musicians are out of a job. We have so little income, we are having to adapt.
Yeah.
And if we don't, we just get tossed out and we have to go work a fucking minimum wage job. Which is what I'm doing. Right? So when he turns around and says, got all this capital now, I'm going to invest in money all over the world, and here are all the musicians that made his fucking fortune. Our livelihoods are down the fucking pan thanks to COVID-19 because we have so little help from authorities and stuff. And there's Daniel Ek sitting on his pile of gold that we made for him, and he says, I'm going to invest this money in energy, or I'm going to invest it in space tech. Where's our fucking slice of the pie, you cunt? Invest in music, invest in venues, invest in labels, invest in artists, grassroots. Give something back, for fuck's sake.
To the people who made you what you are today.
Yeah. I'm just like, that was such a oh my God. When I read that, it made me so angry. Like, the music industry on its knees. So many bands and venues have just been wiped out by this.
Yeah.
And he's not willing to give a fucking penny back.
Yeah.
And to invest. And it's short-sighted as well. And this is the thing with music. I'm on a tirade now. I'm sorry. The floodgates are open. And this is the thing with music. People will always, because it's so important, as I said before, like culture is part of the human experience. It's what makes us who we are. And people will always do music. They will always find a way to do it because it's born out of love and passion. And It's something that people do because they want to do it.
Also, by the way, thank you,
And the
Dutangzu,
money
for
that
gifting for a gifted tier 1 sub. It's much appreciated.
Ooh, exciting! Oh, amazing.
Thank you very much. It's much appreciated. I got to use my little like Lenin escaping from the glass box alert box the first time, which I'm enjoying.
Oh, I didn't see it. Oh, I didn't see it. Oh, it's only on Twitch then.
Yeah, it's only on Twitch. Yeah, although it will come up
Um,
on the YouTube stream as well.
Oh, I do have the I have the Twitch open as well.
Yeah.
But yes, because people will always do music, regardless of the situation, and the monetization is more of a means to earn a living from it and focus on doing that thing that you love, right? And
Yeah.
providing value to other people and enriching their lives. It's a purely like altruistic thing.
Yeah.
And because of this, that's why musicians get screwed over so much, because that compulsion to just keep doing it in spite of the circumstances gets taken advantage of by these fucking profiteers.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
why we're
absolutely.
always over a barrel when it comes to nasty venues, to dodgy agencies, and to fucking oligarchs like Daniel Lane.
That's the problem. That's one of the problems with the wealth accumulation that comes with the neoliberalism, is that we are entirely entrusting the future of our economy and livelihoods and the planet to the people with the money, the people who've accrued all of this wealth, right? And that's it. They have the entire choice of whether they want to make the world a better place or not. And we just have to hope that they do. We just have to fingers crossed. And obviously, thanks to Zizek's kind of liberal communism paradigm, and they're forced to be able to do so. Like, they have to be able to wash their hands of the mess that they've created in order to maintain their position, right? Like, otherwise, people would start, building guillotines, which I mean we're pretty close to doing so already. But if they didn't act in like a philanthropic way, then people would be at their doors already. Because there are still people who go like, "Well, some of these are good billionaires," and it's like, well, they only got there by extracting people's wealth, so.
Exactly. It's funny you mention that. I was watching the Ollie's Elon Musk video last night.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly, and Zizek's absolutely correct in what he says. Pure ideology.
So Spotify could have the potential for people to earn money. There is actually a petition that's gone around to say, look, artists should be at least making 1 pence per stream, at least 1 pence, and Spotify's saying we can't afford to do that.
Did you ever hear of a band called Wolfpack?
Oh yes, it's Wolfpack. Yeah, I've heard of them. I've been watching series on YouTube actually.
They had an album called Sleepify. This was back when you got slightly more stream money, value for your streams, and also there wasn't though they had to change how the streaming revenue worked. They had to change how the streaming revenue worked on Spotify because of what Wolfpack did, which is hilarious. Where they had an album called Sleepify, which was an album entirely of silence, and they just said, everyone just go on Spotify, stream this album on repeat whilst you're asleep to make sure the sound's up so that it works and we get the money right. And then whichever region of the world gives us the most revenue from streaming this album over and over again and getting the money from Spotify, we'll do a free tour over there. And they generated loads of money by people just listening to Wolfpack over and over again, just like silently, which was perfect. It was genius. Also, hello Flip Ribbon in the chat. It's lovely to see you in my comments rather than in yours because I keep commenting. So, full disclosure, Flip Ribbon has a Let's Play of Pathologic 2, which is very, very good. I would highly recommend watching it. It's not as good as my 200% run, of course, because I am the world's best Pathologic 2 player. But I'm a big. I've been having a lot of fun watching that previously, and I'm glad to hear you're a fan of Wolfpack as well. It's lovely to see.
The frontman from Wolfpack, Corey Wong, he's just started up a YouTube series. What's it called? I was watching a couple of Mark sent it to me last night. He's been starting up a YouTube series. What was it called? But it's quite funny. Oh, he has like a regular guest on. What was I can't remember what it's called. It was really funny. But yeah, that's how they've been trying to make a bit of income. Like they've got like a YouTube series going on, and yeah, it's funny. But I really enjoyed it. Honky. Okay.
I mean, at least like places like Bandcamp have like the kind of Patreon subscriber thing going on now that they're doing, in which they can try and create like a place where people can have regular revenues from their music careers. I think that's a good plan that they've got moving on. I just don't think people have cottoned onto it quite as well as they did previously.
Bandcamp is one of those things that's going to keep the music industry going, at least for the meantime, because it used to be the Bandcamp. Bandcamp started in 2008, and they used to be relatively obscure. They used to be like, oh, just an independent artist will put their album out on Bandcamp for people to buy. Bandcamp takes a little bit of a cut from each sale, but it's something that you can just upload your music directly to. You can advertise your merch directly on there. It's dead easy to use. You don't need to go through a distributor. Like, it's a good little starting point if you're an upcoming band. Now, it's a real potential business model for a lot of bands now. So, because obviously with COVID-19 trashing things, a lot of like big bands are now putting their records on Bandcamp so they can try and monetize their work a little more. So instead of people just streaming it, they can go buy it, get some additional content, or they don't have to worry about the fucking markups from when you sell physical merch when it goes out to the stores or it goes out to Amazon, who absolutely.
Well, it's like it again throws like this kind of capitalist like value chain into the issues have with it when you have like you have the raw materials that then turn into manufacturing, that then turn into distribution, that then turn into storefront, that then goes to end user, and every single time there has to be a markup, and so like the end user's cost of product is way higher than neither the materials nor the labor that was put into it, and has been swiped off the top by a billion other entities.
That's it. I don't know if you know this, but latest Deftones album is on Bandcamp.
I'm not surprised. Not surprised.
Yeah. When System of a Down came back with 2 new songs, the first new music in 12 years. So they put out these charity singles because obviously of the horrendous situation going on in Artsakh, Armenia. Because obviously Turkey and Azerbaijan were invading and committing fucking war crimes.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, look, we've got a responsibility here. We have a massive platform. We can do some real good. And so they put all their egos aside and produced these 2 brand new songs. They put them out exclusively on Bandcamp. System of a Down.
Yeah.
And so when people bought the songs, it meant they kept, and they released it on Bandcamp Friday as well. So every last Friday of the month, Bandcamp have been negating their fees, so the artists don't pay any fees on sales made on that day. River Down did this on Bandcamp Friday, so that all of the income came straight to them, and they could give it all to the Armenia Fund.
And that's another problem that we have with the fact that so many bands are beholden to huge record labels because of, the tendency towards monopoly. We've only got 4 major record labels left now, and basically that every other record label is just a subsidiary of them, all like completely indie, right? Like really, really small indie labels. And then if you can't just say no to Spotify anymore unless you're a massive act. You can't say no because you're part of a big label or subsidiary, and they have a deal with Spotify. And to be able to have a deal with this record label, you have to give your music off to Spotify. You can't just remove it. If you want to listen to our music, you just have to go on. You have to go to Bandcamp. If you want, that's just tough. Like you can't say no anymore.
Well, labels are becoming less and less relevant as time goes on, because I don't know if you know the work of Theodore Adorno at all.
That sounds a bit Frankfurt schooly to me.
It is a little bit Frankfurt school. So he was one of the. I read a bit of Adorno when I was at uni because he wrote a lot about music.
Well, culture and arts in general, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting thing is that much like somebody of a completely different political disposition, like Malthus, he ended up being, his predictions turned out to be wrong. So Adorno didn't predict that musicians and artists could end up owning the means of production, which quite often we do, because we have our own little home studios. We can learn to produce music ourselves. We don't need to go to a big label and say, can you give me an advance to record an album? Okay? We can produce an album on a small budget, but we can learn to do that on a low cost. Even if it takes a lot of time and effort to obviously learn your skills as a musician and as a songwriter and producer, you can do it on a much lower cost than you could do in the 60s, right, for example. So he didn't predict that would be a thing. So it means that now musicians do not need a label necessarily. Now, I'm loath to mention him. Because his music is abysmal in my mind and highly problematic. But Tom McDonald,
He's gamed the system. Like, he's huge. He's massive.
yeah, he is independent. He has no label, but he is huge.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's a perfect example where, you know, he may have hired a producer now and again, or he may have a manager, but he is not beholden to a label. He has not got somebody above him saying, you have to do this, you have to do that, because it's in your contract.
Yeah.
He's in control. And a lot of artists are like that these days. You know, you do have to subcontract things out, like management. Once it gets to a point where you can't handle everything yourself, like I said about being self-employed, but you don't have to sign away your rights to your masters anymore. You don't have to sign away your moral rights anymore. And labels know this. They know they're becoming increasingly irrelevant, which is why they have been so gung-ho on copyright to the masters that they do still own. That's why demonetization and copyright claims on YouTube and
DMCA takedowns, yeah. What's interesting when talking about how like Adorno didn't predict this, and so like what his writings about this is, it's somewhat flawed because of how the new media has changed the perception of how we view this particular art form. It's almost as like theory is only relevant, is not, you know, completely all-encompassing and is specific to the time that it was written. And maybe we need to take the best parts of that and apply it to the current world paradigm rather than treat them like gospel. Funny that.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Sankey's moulding in chat.
I should probably mention to Flip Ribbon, we're talking about all sorts of stuff, but it's off the back of the new single. I should probably link that in the chat again.
Yes, I should relink that in chat. I was actually going to say, like, we've been doing this for an hour and almost 2 hours now, so we actually probably need to start wrapping things up. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to add there, just whilst we're here at all?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I once on a roll, I can keep chatting forever, but
I mean, to be honest, like the amount of times over the dinner table that we've just like completely gone on a tangent for hours and hours on end, like it's not surprising.
Hey, none of you realise we are in fact related.
Indeed, we are. I mean, probably by the faces we probably could tell, and like the accents, but
yeah. But yes, siblings, indeed. But, I did want to just finish talking a little bit about Bandcamp, because they are so wonderful in comparison to everything else. If you love an artist's work, if you enjoy what they do, if you want them to keep doing what they do, find out if they've got a Bandcamp, find out if they've got a website, and buy the merch, buy the music from there. Do not go to Amazon. Do not just stream it on Spotify.
I mean, don't go to Amazon anyway, because for anything, but especially not this.
Yeah. So go direct to that artist so that they see the they actually get that money for their work rather than it going to a label or a distributor who are becoming more and more irrelevant these days. So, for example, digital distribution is the most important form now. As much as physical product, you know me, I've got a huge rack of CDs. I love physical product, but it's less and less relevant now.
Mm-hmm.
So digital distribution is more important than ever. And once again, it's more affordable than ever. My distributor is DistroKid.
Yes, I saw. Yeah,
I upload the music directly to them, and they put my music on all the digital stores for me, on Spotify, on iTunes, on Apple, on Tidal, on Instagram, TikTok, everything. And that costs me 30 quid a year to do that. That was something that that was unthinkable in the 60s, for example. Like you say, the labels were the gatekeepers. If you want a music career, you have to come through us. We own everything.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now, it's much more democratized.
Yeah, fuck you, Adorno. Also, thank you, Positive Vibe Fairy. It's much appreciated. All the best for yourself there too.
Oh, puppies.
But yeah, like you're absolutely right. So go out and support them, like, and not just music, any content creator, who's who you values the time of. Go and find the way in which you're going to be able to financially support them that is going to give the most amount of that to them rather than to somebody else. Like, just, you need to might find those ways. That's the problem with like the lack of touring in COVID era, is that that's where the money was made, on ticket sales and merch sales. That's just very much it's so much easier to sell someone a band T-shirt when they're just so fucking hyped out of shouting the songs at you for an hour and 20 minutes.
The beauty of the live show that we're so missing at the moment, because that's where music really thrives, which is why we're so crushed. Like, live streams are great, but it's just not the same when you just finished seeing a band that you love and you're like, that was fucking amazing. I want to speak to them. I want to get something to associate with this.
This experience that I had, this one-time experience, that you can't repeat that. You can't replicate that.
And that's why even arguably outdated formats like CDs, which again I still love, still hold weight, because if you buy that music at that show, I want that CD or that T-shirt or whatever. I
have a Rollo Tomasi watch. I don't wear a watch. Why the fuck do I have a Rollo Tomasi watch? But I know the gig that I got the Rollo Tomasi watch at.
Amazing, right?
Amazing.
Which gig was it?
It was at the Deaf Institute, of course, because it's a gig that I went to. So it was at the Academy or at Deaf Institute.
At the one.
R.I.P. in pieces.
Say again?
R.I.P. in pieces. The Deaf Institute.
Oh, got it. Is it finally come to an end then?
I mean, the people lost their license to it. So, but I can only assume once COVID's over and gigs start happening again, someone else will buy it and start again.
Touch wood, eh? I'm thinking across that's what's going to happen to the Tap and Tumbler. I don't think you ever came into the Tap and Tumbler, did you? Before?
No, I didn't. Fucking landlords.
Well, the thing is with the Tap is that it was a Green King pub.
Oh, right.
And Green King made like 800 freaking redundancies as a result of coronavirus. And the Tap was one of the hardest hit, which is a very stupid thing to do because it's just opposite Rock City. And so what would happen is every time somebody finished up at Rock City, people would go to Spanky Van Dyke's or they would go to the Tap and Tumbler.
Which, like, whenever everyone finished the Academy, they'd always end up in Crowbar or they'd end up in Grand Central. Like,
you know what? So many rock stars have ended up in the Tap, like Hailstorm, Slipknot, Mastodon,
Blimey,
like Skunk and Nancy, all these bands. Like they had, those like paddles that you get those little mini pints resting in, right?
Mm-hmm.
They never served them, but they still kept them so that when the Tap didn't serve mini pints, but they kept these boards so that when bands came into the Tap, they could get them to sign them.
Yeah,
Which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah, I miss the Tap, but hopefully someone will take it over.
Yeah.
Touch wood anyway.
Anyway, well, that's probably to wrap this up here. So do you want to shout out your socials just whilst we've got you on?
Sure. I will pop my hyperfollow link in the chat, which has got links to the song and my various links.
Mm-hmm. I need to do a link tree as well. That's what I need to do.
Do a link tree. I do one for every single anyway, but yeah, it is important to have one overall. So I'll just put that in the chat. So on that page, you will find the main music video and the link for Spotify. Okay, please follow me on Spotify. All my main singles are on there. If you do help stream them, that does.
After we just like the old time trashing Spotify.
Now, listening on Spotify is not bad. Listening exclusively
on Spotify is bad, yeah.
There's also a link to the Bandcamp. As I say, there's a wealth of extra music on there. Every single I do has B-sides, and if you can sling me just a couple of quid, the price of a coffee for a couple more songs, that'd be amazing. I do a discount for the whole discography. It's like £13. And there's T-shirts and stuff there too. If you really like
mugs.
What I do, I have mugs. Yes, the CONFYDE mug, wherever it is. Yeah, I have mugs. There we go. Cara can fully vouch for the CONFYDE mug.
Excellent.
But also on that, in that link, you will also find links to my Instagram, Facebook, and again the YouTube. The Facebook is so tedious because engagement on Facebook is so difficult. So
it is hard, yeah.
Other than YouTube.
Yeah.
And And even if you don't want to buy anything, following me on Bandcamp will mean that you always get notified when I put out some information or an update or any music, and it means you don't have to depend upon an algorithm to decide what you should see.
Yeah.
So
for sure, absolutely.
And like and subscribe to No Justice, of course, if you haven't already.
Absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at no_justice_mtg. It's the same on TikTok. On Instagram, it is mtg_no_justice. And obviously on YouTube or Twitch at no justice or no_justice_mtg. Please like, comment, subscribe for the algorithm purposes. If you could follow me on Twitch, that'd be appreciated, as well as clicking the bell and subscribing on YouTube. All that good algorithm goodness. And yeah, that's all. I think that's all she wrote. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play us out. What does it mean to play us out? I'm gonna play us out with the new single. Let me just try and I'm gonna have to end the call and then immediately switch over to the tab with the song playing. So I'm gonna start playing the song now, and then we're gonna switch the call off. And
you're gonna put the actual video on then?
Yes, I am indeed gonna put the video on.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks everyone in chat for attending, and see you very soon. And Flip Ribbon, thank you so much for the very kind words about the music.
Thank you very much for joining the chat as well, Flip Ribbon. Again, I loved your Pathologic 2 playthrough. It's been great having you in the chat. So yeah, I'm just gonna pop the video on, and I'll catch you all on the next No Justice stream.
All right, take it easy, everyone.
Cancel freedom! To know about suffering. You say it's futile to change a thing. Sit back in your chair with the apathy stare and believe so strongly in nothing. You lot seen the clash in the 70s, but look what happened when you got yourself a mortgage and a family. If drummer were making waves today, I know that's what you say. The bloody do-gooders a pinko and a jolly. It's cancel culture when you disagree, but if it aligns with you, then it's freedom of speech. Oh, you won't be caught out by no deceptive mouths, but continue to smirk at those languishing in the dirt. Oh, this world is so complex, but your attention spans less than 5 minutes. Oh, that's education, worldwide access to information. You've squandered it on the mental gymnastics, picking apart the semantics. Don't you dare look down on me when I sing for a world that could be. Don't you dare look down on me when that front step of my lip is wrapped around a boyish mountain. Deep with the side, scream of guns we order. Cancel freedom! So long as you're on the winning tribe, who cares about anyone's right to life? When you fall so short of seeking any truth, you pick out the lies most convenient to you to perpetuate a brittle worldview. You have so little at stake, it's easy to pretend that everyone else's problem is fake. Comprehending the facts, it seems, is too much to ask. The sound bites relieve your fear, but it's so much more complicated than that. Why is it all you achieve are the tears of those who disagreed? But when it comes your turn to cry, there'll be someone better off than life. Suck it up and get by. It's even as everything you work focused down the drain. You'll always find people less fortunate than you to blame. How did you think that this world ever changed? If all the people stepping up to make a difference were all the same. Don't you dare look down on me when I sing for a world that could be. Don't you dare look down on me when that front step of my lip is wrapped around a morning mountain. Deep in the side, scream of that Won't you realize when you screech, don't politicize? It's just another excuse to throw the blinkers on your head.